Jokkmokk, it turns out, is not just the name of a table that I bought in 2005 from IKEA, but it is also the name of a winter market. Who knew? Look, the stuff you learn from gaming is just incredible. And so now we have a board game in which we will be moving around the board representing us as we visit the winter market, and we shall be collecting cards. Which cards, you wonder? Well, first let me tell you that the cards will go around that board, and then you will move Tokaido style. The last player, the one closest to this token, which we call the stalker for reasons that will be understood, can go ahead as far as they want, as long as they don't pass the stoker, because that doesn't make any sense. And then, boom, you'll end up there and you'll take the card that you are on. Then the stalker moves, and the next person who is behind goes, and so on and so forth. And that's the end. That's the game pretty much, at least the game mechanic. Around that, and you will continue until all cards have been assigned. Around that very simple game mechanic, you're gonna have a lot of variety because there are a lot of different types of cards that will be shuffled together to form the decks from which you draw to place the cards on the board. From Mystery Box, Aurora Borealis, Q, Friend, Fika, Dalecarlian Horse, Antique, Donation, and so on and so forth. The back of the rulebook will recommend the different setups, but you can mix and match and experiment and change with more players. You may want to have more cards, and that means more mini decks. So that the game doesn't feel too short. So once you decide the things that you want to have, suppose we're gonna have sparklers, because sparklers are pretty. So you take those cards and you will notice that each comes in two flavors, the day and the evening. So suppose we're gonna have sparklers, so we take these, and then we're gonna add candy. It's today's Halloween as I'm filming this, so yay, candy. And so on and so forth. And then you will shuffle each deck separately, which is why I'm not doing it, because it's a little annoying then too, when you have to divide everything back again. But that's the idea. You'll have a day deck that you use to set up the game, and there will be some cards left, and then an evening deck. Depending on what cards you put there, the game, or I should say the actions available, the objectives available, the scoring things, changes entirely. That's why I really cannot tell you much other than move, take a card, and do what it says. Also, after you set up the game, you will want to take out these player rates. There is one such player for each card, so that it's available for everybody as a reminder. Then this game, so we have a friend, the mystery box, the Dalecarlian, the antique, and the Q, for example. And so I'll just give an example of what these cards say, so you get a sense of what can be done. Now, some cards will simply sit there after you take them, and they will score points at the end of the game, like the horse. Has no special scoring, no nothing. There's just a number of points printed on it, and that's what you get. The antique will give you 3 points for every antique that you have. Now, all of these cards have to do with the icons. You may have a card with 2 antiques, then it counts as 2. A card with 3 counts as 3, and so on and so forth. No specific card scoring for the Aurora. This one will have a variable number of rolls and coffees, and you score 4 points for each pair that you have around from the cards of this kind. And then other stuff will let you do different things. The donation will have to do different things. The donation, you must remove a card in front of you, and then you perform the rest. Bells, you are placing in sets. Friend, you flip face down at least 5. So if you have at least 5 friend icons in your cards, you can choose to flip them face down to trigger an effect, which is to gain any one card in the market, for example. The present, you give stuff to other people. This is the stinky fish. No one likes it. It allows you to give penalties to people. Probably the most confrontational one. Here you're forming sets with the snowflake. The lanterns, you place them not just next to each other randomly in front of you, but you're gonna form, see if I can find them. You're gonna form like a pyramid, because that's how lanterns work. Everybody knows that. And at the end of the game, you'll score points for each number that matches. For example, like these are in my set at the end of the game. That's worth 8 points because those two match. And then I remember forming a pyramid, so I get 10 more points from there. That's how the lanterns work. And the patchwork works similarly. Again, you don't just place it randomly in front of you, but you will try to actually create a quilt with matching colors, and you can orient them and turn them and change them as long as you're gonna try to make them match, because that's what scores you points. This is the idea. As you can see, as you can imagine, some games will be just or mainly about forming sets. Some games will be more like action riches because the cards will allow you to do different things. And there's just huge variety. Just look at the suggested ones and there's more variety still when you start mixing, matching, and messing these things around. So that's the idea. Move forward and take the card on which you land, move the stalker, replenish, of course, from your deck the card or cards that are empty at that point, because it can be, say, that the stalker while moving, the stalker needs to reach the next player while moving, some cards will be discarded. So you may have to replenish more things. That's the idea. Move around, collect cards, run from the stalker, because that's what it really looks like that you're doing. At the end of the game, you will collect points for the sets that you have collected. Some cards will also have a mid-game scoring, for which there are these tokens. But ultimately, the player with the best sets and the most points at the end of the game wins the game. I like this game as a light family game, but I would say not necessarily for every family. Even some members of my family, one in particular, had a bit of a resistance at the beginning. Why so? Well, the art is very charming, almost everything is very friendly. The general idea is so simple, but for the game to be fun and interesting, of course, you want to change the cards and the effects every time. And to me, that's something important to me. I like my games to stay fresh, and if a game always have the same cards, then a strategy will emerge that will make the game repetitive and trivial. But that also means relearning the game or relearning the strategies every time. So the fact that a game like this now is produced, of course, is the sign of that my vision of we want the games to stay challenging, not to go on autopilot, to force us to think of different strategies every time. That is an idea that is successful. But again, it may just be that if you're playing it with very casual players, some of them will be like, oh, why do I have to learn this new card? Why do I have to learn how it works? So it's a family game for families of people who are into strategy gaming and modern hobby gaming for sure. Once you keep that in mind, then you have a lot of different options. Now I have to say, however, that it's nice to have all of those scripted recommended setups when you start experiment with your own. The idea in general is pretty fun, but you have to be open to the possibility that a certain setup will not be particularly exciting, because a certain card will emerge as very powerful and everybody just goes for that one. But again, you start with the scripted ones, and you'll have a good amount of plays before maybe you start messing with them a little bit, and maybe you regret some of those. I'm speaking from experience. And I like the general idea, of course, which is Tokaido no Miji, and recently I reviewed a game Alpujarras that also has the idea of like the last player goes next, and so the further you go, the later it's gonna be before it's your time again. Which in some games may cause some downtime, but here the game is so quick because everybody's just taking a card. So the general dilemma, how far do I go, trading the number of times that I go with some significant advantages, nice trade-off, it's embodied very well here. There is one detail though, It is just that means that every turn you gotta replenish the board constantly, and that can be just a little bit tedious. There's no doubt about it. I ended up, who knew, during our family place to be the one that did that job, as my family members were thinking about the strategy, and I was thinking about the strategy and doing that all the time. And also set up with all these decks. You have to decide which ones. You look for those decks. Look for the specific player aids, shuffle them together separately, but then separating the cards at the end, not just by type, but then we need type day and night. I have to say, I wish that the game, for what it is, simple, move around and take a card and form a set, I wish that it had a setup and a takedown that was a little more streamlined, a little more linear. That part feels a little too much for what the game is. And so that's my assessment of Jokkmokk. It's a bit cumbersome to set up, to take down especially, and then to play, logistically speaking, but it's also simple and linear in terms of gameplay if your family enjoys that. I don't know how well it's gonna do a game night with strategy players, because I think it may be too light for that. But again, as a family game with variable rules, it is definitely enjoyable.